On this episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast, we talk about the band A Day to Remember. We talk about how fun their concerts used to be, and we also learn a little bit about the legal system with some things Josh did back in the day. Thanks for jumping on, and let's open this pit up.
Somebody hit somebody! What's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast. You're here with Trevor, Josh, and whiny Kyle tonight. So, just kidding. But no, we're gonna jump into this, and we're talking about Day to Remember this week. But just really quickly, any new songs come out this week that you guys are paying attention to or catching?
Crime in Stereo released a couple songs, and they're pretty sweet. I like Crime in Stereo. And then I saw this clip on Instagram. Have you guys heard of Red Clay Strays?
Red Clay Strays?
Yeah, they're like
Okay.
I think their technical genre is like Appalachian country,
The freak.
but it's awesome. I'll have to send you guys some clips, but I saw this clip of this guy. He looks like Elvis, but him and his drummer are just like going ham in this clip, and I'm like, this is incredible. So go check them out, dude, especially live. It looks like they put on an incredible show live.
So, I mean, mostly like just acoustic guitar, or is it like banjo? I mean, when you say Appalachian country, what are we talking?
It's not
here?
like
Spoons, washboards?
kind of, yeah. But it's not like twangy Texas country.
Okay.
You know, it's more of like a blues influenced, like what Elvis would have played, right?
Okay.
It's dope though. You should check it out. It's sweet. I'm telling you.
Have you guys ever listened to ISIS?
I mean, except for those videos on YouTube, but
The ones that slip by the moderators for a day.
They just did a re-release of Mosquito Control, The Red Sea. That's up on Spotify and Apple Music.
And what's ISIS?
So ISIS is like, they're like a doom band is probably the best way to explain it.
Ooh.
So they're just
Okay.
like that heavy, I don't know, heavy doom metal probably. Not like hardcore, not metal, but probably just like, we're almost like you sell out of both of those and you just start doing a lot of drugs and just do doom metal.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to explain that.
All right. Yeah. I don't listen to many doom bands, so can't say I'm a fan of ISIS, but I'll give them a listen to.
I got a list for you. I love.
is that a weird sentence to say?
Yeah.
I don't listen to doom music, so I
No.
don't like ISIS.
Yeah. You're not a fan of ISIS. I mean, I think at this point we're all on the same page.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, this week for me, I was actually out. I didn't have service, so I didn't listen to a whole lot of new stuff. Mostly just a day to remember when I was traveling to and from my weekend vacation. But yeah, man, get right into it. This was straight nostalgia for me. I still love A Day to Remember, but going back, for those who have heart, Homesick, What Separates Me from You, like these albums are extremely influential on me growing up. So I was pumped listening to these things. What do you guys think going back?
Yeah, it was fun going back. It brought up a lot of memories because I think we had some real good times listening and watching them play. But I remember cruising around in your crappy car, Trevor. What kind of car was that?
Old brown Buick.
Yeah, it was brown. It's disgusting.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would rock out to this album. So
Yeah.
for those who have heart, that was the album. Yeah. But very, very fond memories going back and listening to these guys.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of Day to Remember stories, especially I got some with Josh too. What do you think, Josh? What do you remember about A Day to Remember?
It's fun going through the nostalgia of it. I wouldn't call it their first record, but I'd say the first record that I listened to, For Those Who Have Heart. Trying to go back and listen to that record, I can't get into that record now, but I remember listening to that record so much when I was 18, 19 years old, because that was almost like the cross of like a good hardcore to like metal vibe that like you could kind of go both ways with that record. So it was really easy to attach to, but I really still love Homesick. Homesick's just so heavy, and it's just really good. Has that cliche like acoustic song at the very end that's still really good.
Oh yeah, that song's amazing.
That I think
Yeah.
my favorite song off that record is "Welcome to the Family." Still,
Oh, with Vincent from the Acacia Strain.
does it have Vincent from the Acacia Strain?
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you guys, like there's a couple of songs where like I've sat there and narrated a music video in my head for like different songs, and Welcome to the Family with Jeremy and Vincent yelling at each other. I think it would have made like the ultimate music video. Like Jeremy just screaming at Vincent the entire time. I think it would have been hilarious, but we don't need to go down my weird rabbit holes. But yeah, for those who have heart, okay, so band starts in 2003, Ocala, Florida. There's a lot of really heavy music in Florida at this time. Like, I'm pretty sure Cannibal Corpse is Florida based. Under Oath was Florida based. Seven Star, I think is what they were called. They were Florida based. So a lot of these like hardcore or more metal bands were in the scene, and then these guys were really influenced by Blink 182. They even said like All Time Low, a lot of like the poppy stuff. And they're like, we want to play it all. So we get the mashup that is A Day to Remember. And they started this whole trend of what we could probably call easycore, right?
Easy core, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what was interesting looking back? Because some of these bands we've talked about with like even Scary Kids, but you look at like Title Fight, Set Your Goals, Misery Signals, they weren't traditional hardcore bands. You could tell their influence in the hardcore scene, but they had a lot of involvement in the hardcore scene. Now, I don't know much about like the individuals with the Day to Remember, but if you look back, even on their earlier tours, they weren't touring with like traditional hardcore bands like some of these others were that you wouldn't have expected it, right? And did you guys notice that? I mean, does that take away some of their cred with like the hardcore influence that maybe they weren't like involved in the scene? Does that make it kind of poserish when you're going back looking at it?
I don't know. They were weird because they always drew a lot of hardcore kids that didn't necessarily go to those shows. I think the first time I saw them, they came with Silverstein and the Devil Wears Prada at the Avalon,
Mm-hmm.
which normally most of the kids that went would not have gone there unless a Day to Remember was, unless if they weren't playing.
Yeah.
But I think bands like them, I've noticed that too with like August Burns Red and like Stick to Your Guns kind of started swaying the other direction, touring with bands like the Devil Wears Prada and Silverstein as well. So you kind of got a huge genre out of it. And I think I also saw Day Remember play with Rise Against. I don't think I've really ever seen them play with a traditional hardcore band. I'm sure they have, but I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever
Well,
seen them.
yeah. And that's kind of the point that I was making is like even a band like Title Fight, I mean, obviously super ingrained in the hardcore scene, not playing hardcore music, but still have that credibility and scene
Mm-hmm.
cred.
Right.
And
It felt
maybe
like a lot of hardcore kids came out for A Day to Remember, but you never heard of them touring with,
Mm-hmm.
a Madball or something like that, like some of these other bands were.
And maybe this is more of a symptom of coming out of Florida, right? Maybe this was because we talk about Title Fight, we talk about some of these
Yeah,
other
okay.
bands, and they're from Pennsylvania. They're from the areas of the heavy hardcore groups. And so they're really deeply ingrained with those bands to go out on tour with. These guys are in Florida was like metal, right? We had a lot of metal coming out of
Yeah, but
Florida.
like, I mean, look at Newfound Glory, right? Same thing, pop punk band coming out of Florida, deep roots in the hardcore scene.
I
And
think
that gives them cred, right? Because you like, it's one of those bands we talked about early on that was like, you get a pass from the hardcore kids. And
Yeah,
Newfound
but
Glory is one of
which
those.
hardcore bands is Newfound Glory touring with? Like,
Oh, there's tour. I'll have to pull them up. But there's tours where they've played with like, I mean, they toured with Shai Hulud. I know it's because but that's the thing. The guy played in Shai Hulud. That's the point I'm making. I mean, it's not a big deal. I just thought it was interesting that like a band that touts the hardcore stuff, especially with that first album. For those who have, well, I guess are we calling that their first? Or are we going to actually say that and Their Name Was Treason was their first album. Because
So,
half
and
those
their name
songs are
was Their Treason was their first album, re-released as Old Record in 2008. So yes, we are going to call For Those Who Have Heart number 1 because
okay.
Old Record's number 2.
Okay. Well, For Those Who Have Heart, I mean, even the original album has like the hardcore art with the guy with a baseball bat and stuff like that. But outside of a few breakdowns, I don't know that there's a lot of like hardcore. I mean, maybe this is a stupid question, but does that matter? Does that matter?
I mean, I think that they came from the straight edge scene. A couple of the members repped straight edge. So I think that they got cred solely because of that. They did tour with Newfound Glory. And when Newfound Glory was doing their side project, International Superheroes of Hardcore, they were on that tour with them. So, like, yeah, we're not talking like the big hardcore names, but they are with people from the hardcore scene.
I think the biggest thing it points out to me is Newfound Glory is a bunch of hardcore kids in a pop punk band. Title Fight is a bunch of hardcore kids in a you know, I don't know, whatever,
Shoegaze.
Indie rock,
indie
shoegaze.
rock. A Day to Remember is just a bunch of dudes in a hardcore band. I think that's the difference. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Not necessarily maybe credit, but it's like if you're known in the hardcore scene, it's like, oh, hey, this is Ned's new project. This is so and so's new project. It's like, oh, okay, like I like them. I've known who they've been for the last 20 years. I'll support it. Versus a band that pops up that is good, it's not going to really attract the hardcore kid mentality because it's not somebody they want to support because they don't know them. But to the average person, they're like, this is really good. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of why they went the other way. My opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question for sure.
Well,
I
thank you.
wonder I wonder if they would consider themselves as part of the hardcore scene. You know, like or if they just consider themselves as part of just this genre that they've
Yeah.
basically done.
Well, I mean,
You know?
all the like, going back and looking through all the albums and stuff, they're all almost titled as metalcore albums, which, yeah, I mean, if you're touring with the Devil Wears Prada and stuff, it makes sense. But I mean, you can't tell me that first album, For Those Who Have Heart, does not have like hardcore influences with
Oh, it's definitely
the riffs and breakdowns.
hardcore.
Even Homesick, I feel like Homesick, you start to hear the difference. But For Those Who Have Heart, for sure.
Yeah, they had two different producers, and I think what like for those who have heart, I'm getting my albums mixed up. I gotta pull them up. Homesick, I feel like was way heavier than the first one, but I feel like For Those Who Have Heart was way more aggressive.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, that's a cool point because we've talked a lot about differences in sounds, right? And For Those Who Have Heart sounds more like a hardcore punk album, whereas Homesick might be heavier, but it's more on the metalcore side, right? Those breakdowns are very much more metalcore influenced than like traditional hardcore. So,
like, I feel like the songs that were poppy were way poppier, but the songs that were heavy were way heavier.
yeah,
Where For Those Who Have Heart, it was just more like, I want to run around in circles and jump on top of my friends.
Yeah,
100%.
very much so. And so prepping for this, I actually watched guys, I like the documentaries. Like, I'll go and I'll hop on YouTube and I'll find something that's 20 minutes to an hour long and I'll watch them talk about like what's going on during that time. I watched the behind the scenes of the re-release For Those Who Have Heart. And they were talking about what they were listening to at that time. And they went through all 5 band members. So at this time, it's Jeremy, it's Neil, it's Tom, it's Josh, and then their drummer, Alex, I think is his name. And Jeremy's talking, he's like, I'm listening to like hot water music. I'm listening to like, he's like indie rock and stuff like that. And then you were listening to Tom, who's talking like, I'm listening to Nirvana and everything like this. Alex is like, I'm listening to For the Fallen Dreams and Comeback Kid. Like, there was such just like a big gap in what everyone was listening to, but it all seems to make it on the first 2 albums. I don't know. Like, what you're asking is it's really interesting. I'm with you guys. I think that this first album, For Those Who Have Heart, it was as close to the punk roots as they could have gotten, and then they started to stray metal.
This is my favorite album. I think Homesick is a better album, but For Those Who Have Heart is my favorite album. And it's
Okay.
probably because there's more nostalgia to it, but I just really love how those songs flow. I love how
Man,
the album flows.
I
It's great.
remember walking into your basement and you and Chris were down there and you guys were like, dude, you have to check this out. New band coming out. It's straight pop punk. And then it has a sick breakdown. And
Mm-hmm.
you turn on fast forward to 2012. And it's just like, it comes out just as fast as you can, pop punk beats, all that stuff. And then it hits you with that My Friends Come First is the bottom line. And all of us were just like, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like that thing, you know?
Yeah.
So pretty sure like next day ran out, bought this album. It was on constant repeat in the car. But
Does
yeah.
does this album have the greatest cover song ever made with Since You've Been Gone
Oh,
from Kelly Clarkson?
yeah, you talked about her once already, didn't you? Kelly Clarkson.
I think I've
We've
talked about
talked about
her,
it before.
but the cover they did of Since You've Been Gone is
Yeah, that's a really
it's
good cover. I
amazing.
like the music video too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw the music video.
Aren't they
Yeah,
just like in a closet, like pulling the stuff off
yeah,
and
because
throwing it
they used
around?
to play that on in the mall and Journeys all the time. Always saw that on there.
So we talked about Tall T Kids a couple episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And is this not the introduction to metal for every Tall T kid? Since You've Been Gone, Kelly Clarkson, you have the poppy stuff, and then the screaming breakdown. Like everyone could listen to this because everyone liked Since You've Been Gone.
I mean, I still feel like I think the first time I saw kids with tall tees was Dance Gavin Dance. But maybe they came from the Day to Remember show the day before. I don't know.
Absolutely did. I just remember going to Day to Remember shows, and these were the worst crowds to be in because of the variety of people who showed up. You had everyone who came out. You had jocks, you had preppy kids, you had the hardcore kids, you had the metal kids. Like everyone came out
Yeah.
for a Day to Remember.
I think what I hated the most is it was all the kids that came from high school that I absolutely hated, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just like, ugh. And that I feel like that's why I almost started straying away from trying to not listen to them or not tell people that I liked them. Because, then you're related to, find relation to people that you don't like, whatever. But
What's
I
so
I remember their shows being huge though.
Mm-hmm.
Just packed. And it was, they announced the show, you'd run down to Smith Ticks, get your ticket, pay whatever, and you go stand out in line because they always played at the Saltaire because no other venue was big enough to host a show like that. And it was just full front to back.
Right.
Yeah, they during this time, because I remember one of these tours specifically, Josh, that you're talking about, but it was the Easy Core tour with Newfound Glory, 4 Year Strong, Crime in Stereo, and A Day to Remember. And
Yes.
I remember that just being absolutely packed, but ridiculously aggressive and violent, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy that and again, I mean, maybe that's a Utah thing just because crowds there don't know how to mix. I don't know if it's the same everywhere else. I've heard it's not as bad everywhere else, but I don't know that people knew what to do during that, and we knew what to do, but people were not happy about what we would do.
Oh man. So the one that really comes to mind for me is when they came with Devil Wears Prada. So this would have been after Homestead came out, and Devil Wears Prada headline. So it was a co-headline bill, and in Utah, Devil Wears Prada was the last band. So this place was packed front to back, and then it cleared out after A Day to Remember, which was interesting. But we were there with our friend who brought his little brother, and people were swinging hard, and some big older dude back kicked his little brother across the pit to the point where like they thought they were carrying him out on a stretcher kind of thing, and they kicked the dude out. Like I felt so bad because he like went over, he tried to help him up, but it's exactly what you said. People just didn't know how to act.
Yeah.
And they were so packed and they were so aggressive during these shows. The pit was like only big enough for like two people to swing, and you were always swinging into people.
Yeah.
You had like four pits,
Oh yeah, wherever you could open.
You'd have kind of a push pit. You'd have one where it was just like free for all, and then you'd have one where like all the hardcore kids finally just kind of like went, did their own thing to just keep it separate. But yeah, I actually remember that Crime and Stereo tour because I went and saw that down in Vegas because that's when the International Superheroes of Hardcore played
Yeah.
House of
Right.
Blues. That was in October of 2008. But
I remember seeing that one. I think it was in the venue.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah. So a couple stories. I remember, Josh, me and you, it might have been one of the Warp Tours during this time with a day to remember, but you and I would like link arms over each other, you know, like we were hugging, and me and you would run and just swing together and like
yep.
jump and kick people, like skipping while we're holding on to each other and just smash everyone in our way. And then
Yep.
I can't remember who it was. I feel like it was you, Trevor, but I don't remember. But we like linked arms and then spun in a circle, right? Like to swing and like spin
Yeah.
and hit people. And I knew the breakdown was coming. So I like really torqued my body and I just like threw whoever it was like a frisbee into the wall of the pit, and he just like slammed into like four people, and then I just start swinging like crazy. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I remember from going to these shows, you know. And
Last thing about For Those Who Have Heart. Again, this album was on constant repeat for us. I feel like it was like this. It was Under Oath. They're Only Chasing Safety. I often had AFI on, and then there's just a few others, right? But Kyle, bro, I'm sorry. We were the weirdest people ever. When we would put on Monument
oh
and
yeah,
you'd go low and I would go high. And if you haven't done that with one of your friends, have you really listened to A Day to
it's
Remember?
true.
Or could you call yourself a true fan?
Yeah, if you weren't taking turns singing the different parts, man, what are you really doing?
Exactly.
I don't think I can sing the high parts anymore.
Oh, for sure no. For
There's
sure
no
no.
way.
But okay, we're gonna keep cruising through this. But Homesick 2008 comes out. Josh, you've already said they've gone to the more hard or the more metal side of things now. It's more metalcore. This is a heavier record in terms of like breakdowns and just hard songs and stuff like that. But they start to lose some of that, maybe that punk influence, right?
Yep.
So what do you guys think about Homesick?
Like I said, I think it's their best album, quality wise, song wise. I think it's their best album, and actually, I think most of the world agrees because it charted at 21 on the Billboard 200. So it's an incredible album. The Downfall of Us All might be the greatest intro to any album ever made.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is there another song that has a rhythm pattern that you can distinguish what song it is? Like, I can't think of another song that if someone goes da 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 da, that they're
yeah.
not like A Day to Remember. Like, it might be the only one where you can do a rhythm pattern and someone knows what song you're talking about.
I think what's funny with that intro is because you know it was a total joke because whenever you're trying to explain how a song goes, that's what you do.
Uh huh.
And then they just did it as part of their song, you know?
You think they're writing it and stuff, and he's all, dude, what if you did a riff like da 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 da?
Oh,
And he's like, all
totally. I
right, and
mean,
he just read it. Yeah.
if you listen to the end of some of their songs, you can hear them like singing and stuff. They're like, should I keep that part? Yeah, dude, keep it. You
Yeah.
know? Totally, for sure.
And maybe
No, they
maybe
were
that's
having
what
fun.
bothered me the most about their like later albums is it does kind of feel like the fun got taken away from it. I feel like the first two albums didn't really take themselves that serious. It was still fun.
Let's talk about that a little bit because as I was looking into this, something that was really interesting started showing up when you would start to click into the album specifically. So, for those who have heart, their name was Treason, Homesick, all credit is given to A Day to Remember for
Mm-hmm.
songwriting. As soon as you hit what separates me from you, it starts very specifically saying McKinnon was on this song, Scaff was on this song, Westfall was on this song. Like it starts specifically saying who is credited. We talked about 2008 probably being their pinnacle album, Homesick being their pinnacle, also gave them the commercial success. The band's popping off big, right? Probably starting to have these business conversations now.
Mm-hmm.
Where does credit go and stuff like that? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I know after Homesick, this is when Tom Denny exited the band, but he still helped produce A Day to Remember. He stayed in Florida, from what I understand, as a producer. So I think that had a lot to do with maybe him exiting, them changing the strategy of how they're going to write, because their jump from Homesick to what was the next, or what
What
separates
separates me
me
from
from
you?
you is
2010.
is definitely a different shift. It's more to the poppy side, not heavy, which is weird because you would think going from like the punk record to like a heavy record, you're all expecting kind of the next one to be follow the same pattern, but then it went pop, kind of heavy, but mainly pop.
I think a lot of that's Kevin Scaff coming in for Tom Denny, because we talked about he came from Four Letter Lie, who was a much poppier band.
So the other thing too is what separates me from you is only like a year later from Homesick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of that was just like the label they were on, because they got into a big lawsuit with Victory
Mm-hmm.
Records about number of albums, right? They had a 5 album commitment or whatever, and then Victory didn't want to count their live albums. I could be butchering this, but this is what I remember. Victory didn't want to count their 2 live albums. A Day to Remember did, and they wanted to get away from Victory.
Yep.
Well, that's ended up what the judge ruled. The
Okay.
actual complaint was that they were breaching because of not fulfilling new music records. They were supposed to do 5, they were at 4. And then when they took it to the courts, A Day to Remember actually said, no, we've done 13 through you guys, because they're like, we did For Those Who Have Heart, we did For Those Who Have Heart Deluxe Edition, we did For Those Who Have Heart Digital. Like they started like doing all this stuff. And the judge was like, no, we're not going to do that, but we will count your live albums towards the 5.
Yeah, so I wonder though if like the album after Homesick and stuff was just let's get this out of here so we can complete this. It's not like their best songs. Maybe they're songs they had from Homesick that were left over that didn't make the record. I don't know. Homesick is just such a good album that I don't know how you go from that to What Separates Me From You.
I mean, there's a lot of horror stories I've heard about Victory Records. I mean, maybe they were being forced to write whatever was in at that time, and they got tired of doing that and wanted to break away. And so What Separates Me From You is what they wanted to play.
Hopefully not.
Well, so this was, What Separates Me From You was the last one on Victory. So if they were going to be influenced for this one, this is the one that they would have had control over. Victory would have had control over. I like this album. Like, I might be the outlier here, but I'll say Second Sucks is my favorite song they've ever put out. I love Second Sucks. It's such a good, heavy song.
Yeah, I mean, it does suck.
All right, bro.
But like hold on. The only point I want to make too about Homesick before we move on, unless you guys have anything else, but there is a reference in one of their songs on Homesick to the Secret Lives of Freemasons.
Oh, really?
And I thought that's sick because nobody references them anymore.
Okay.
They're a tight band, dude.
Yeah.
I really liked Better Off This Way off that record.
Off
Got
of
a
which
really catchy chorus. It's kind of faster, a little teeny tiny breakdown. The way that it's all structured, I thought was really good.
Oh, we're talking What Separates Me From You?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I do too. Here's the thing. I actually asked you guys about this a couple months ago, but my opinion, if you make a Day to Remember metalcore album, just take their heaviest metalcore songs, I'd put it like a top 5 metalcore album. Like, I love A Day to Remember metalcore. It's so fun for me. So like, You Be Tells I'll Be Sonic, Second Sucks, Sticks and Bricks. Like, I love that stuff. And Kyle, you're sitting there shaking your head, and you could get your old man out of here. Kind of
Look,
thing,
dude,
but
I just feel like there's better metalcore bands.
oh,
Like,
I freaking love it.
There's like, we got into this a little bit from first to last, but it's like a lot of their metalcore was done better by other people. Like, I'd rather just go listen to the Devil Wears Prada or the Color Morale or Under Oath.
See, this is what I love, okay? I love that these guys had a very simple formula. It's on almost every single song. You know, you're going chorus, verse, or verse, chorus, whatever it is, but they have their pre-breakdown one-liners. And you cannot tell me that these guys are not the kings of pre-breakdown one-liners, right? I mean, disrespect your surroundings.
Disrespect your surroundings is one of the coolest lines before any breakdown.
In Mr. Highway Wakes Up, it's wake up kind of thing. They go all the way every single time.
There was definitely an era of like breakdown call outs, not just like live, but in the actual records. I think the
Yes.
first one I remember hearing was actually in Stick to Your Guns, the Rest Assured, Without a Heart That's Pure, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they do the
Yeah.
breakdown, and then you hear move, and that
Yeah.
just kind of, makes the hair stand up on your arms. But yeah, they did that all throughout that record, Homesick, and for those who have heart. So
Yeah, they do it to today. In the last album, You're Welcome, and I'll tell you, You're Welcome, it's trash. We're going to talk about more just trash final albums because this is now a band who's doing it for the money. But there is a song, Last Chance to Dance, Bad Friend. And dude, they like some of their pre-chorus breakdowns were like so mean too. And he starts screaming, "Who's going to carry your casket?" Like, it's just like, it's such an aggressive call out on someone kind of thing. Like, dude, you don't have friends. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But they mess that up because they go, "Who's going to carry your casket?" And then they do some stupid chanting where they go, "Who?" in the middle of it. It's so dumb. They ruined
Yeah.
it. But I freaking love their pre-chorus or their pre-breakdown stuff. It's my favorite things ever. And I like typed out a bunch of them. I love it. So A Day to Remember will always have a special place in my music because of just that kind of stuff. Before we skip over Homesick, Josh, do you have a bit of a confession with this album? Or am I telling this story for you?
I have no idea.
It looks like I'm telling this story.
I don't know what you're gonna say, so I'm excited to hear
Dude,
this.
okay, so we walk in to local record shop. Deluxe edition just dropped. I grabbed
You
3
can't
or 4
snitch me out on this now. I know where we're going.
local record shop, no names being dropped.
Wait, his what's it called? Statute of limitations pass or whatever before
Probably.
we get into this?
Allegedly, I buy 3 or 4 albums. We're walking out. All of a sudden, Josh is pushing me out the door, be like, "Move, move, move." We walk out and crawl into my car, and he starts stretching in my backseat, sticks his head down his pants, and pulls out the deluxe edition of it. You remember? Homesick. It was amazing. Obviously, popped
Allegedly.
it straight in. Allegedly, it was maybe someone else with us, but
First of all, the record fell, and I picked it up and tripped out the door, and then I felt really dumb to go back in to return it because it would have looked like that I took it on accident.
Okay, so the statute of
you had to,
limitation for
break it out of the packaging.
the statute of limitation for like petty theft in Utah is 4 years. So
Oh, you're good.
you're good, Josh.
Well, and you know what? Graywell doesn't even exist anymore. So
There's
here's
2
the
of them.
thing.
Plus,
Here's
you
the
know
thing.
what? Victory sucks. So take that album.
Yeah, Victory sucks. The guys that ran that Graywell were total a-holes anyway.
That's true.
And they wanted like $80 for that freaking thing. And I'm like, I'm not paying $80 for this CD, but I really want to see the DVD. And it came home with me.
It just happened to. He like closed his eyes and wished really hard, and it ended up in his pants.
Yeah.
Ended up in his pants.
I remember going to
Not
that
the first
Graywell.
time, but-
I remember going to that Graywell all the time because I always had like really cool CDs, but I hated dealing with the people that worked there.
Which
Yeah.
Graywell was it?
The one in Bountiful.
Bountiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
dude.
feel like we spent more time though at the one in like downtown Salt Lake by the Pie.
Did you? I didn't. I spent.
I've been to that one a couple times. Yeah, I
That
just
one had
remember
the
that.
best albums though.
One thing that I did come across that I wasn't aware of, and I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but apparently there was a little bit of A Day to Remember 4 Year Strong beef. Do you guys know about this? So I always
All bands hate each other.
sure. I mean that's probably fair, but
My
apparently
cloud.
when they were on tour with Newfound, the lineup was supposed to be Newfound headlining 4 Year A Day to Remember. Halfway through the tour, A Day to Remember, so many people were coming and then leaving for A Day to Remember. They asked 4 Year to switch with them, allegedly, and apparently there was beef, and that's what the song "Second Sucks" is about. Like someone like literally broke down the song, and like the very first line, it's like, "You've been at it 4 years, but couldn't reach to the next level." Like, this is a pun. You've been at it 4 years.
Dude, this is like some Taylor Swift level investigation in music, man.
The one thing about it is in the music video when they're doing like that video game fighting, the last boss, final boss, is a big guy with a beard, and his move is Beardo's beatdown and bada belly. So instead of bada bing with a pipe and
Yeah.
beat down in the key of happy, like it was a pretty clear call out, but both bands have denied it. Who knows? But
Yeah.
apparently we had some diss tracks in hardcore.
It had to have been that Crime in Stereo tour.
It was. Yeah, that's the one that they're talking
Because I,
about.
I remember actually watching it. Went Crime in Stereo, From International Superheroes of Hardcore, 4 Years Strong, A Day to Remember, and then Newfound Glory.
Yeah.
Um,
And it was supposed to be switched.
and I wouldn't say a lot of people left after A Day to Remember. I would probably more say, at least the show I went to in Vegas, there were so many people that got kicked out during A Day to Remember. Like, I kid you not, there had to have been at least 100 people. They were just getting drug out because in the House of Blues, it was. You remember we went up to that show in Pocatello,
Yeah.
and we had those two guys that were like trying to police the moshing.
Yeah.
So everything's
Soda.
like you can kind of like you can two step a little bit, but you can't swing your arms. Your feet cannot leave the ground. You cannot push anybody. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and this is the tour that you brought to the House of Blues. And so during A Day to Remember, like it was like the whole crowd just said, "Screw this." And I mean, security had it handled to the best they could, but yeah, people were just getting thrown out left and right. So by the time Newfound Glory played, crowd was like half the size. I was like, I mean, well, this is cool.
Crazy.
So now I can get up front and watch them, but
Yeah. I gotcha. Next, so still on what separates me from you. So this is the lawsuit time, right? A Day to Remember primarily won. They got out of their contract with Victory. They gained digital royalties. They had to pay them like $2 million or something like that for withholdings. And then they got publishing control. And I didn't really understand what this was because Victory won the master rights.
mm-hmm.
So they won publishing rights, but Victory won master rights. What does that mean, Josh? Do you know?
I've never really dealt with a big label that wants control like that, but like I would assume so mastering is like the final product of the
Right.
actual record. So like you record, it gets produced in the recording, and then you get it mixed, and then you get the master final copy. I could go out on a limb here. I could be wrong, but I would think if they have the mastering rights, they really have control of everything that's on Apple Music and Spotify because that's the mastered final.
But they don't get royalties on it, right?
They don't get royalties if like for plays, but they could also control if they leave
Because
it
that
on or
goes
not.
to publishing,
Yeah.
right? So my understanding, because I had to sit here and read about publishing versus master rights, and I still didn't quite understand, which is why I was asking you. But like my understanding is like if someone wants to use one of the songs in like a movie or a video game or something like that, that would go through Victory and they would sign off on the copyright aspect of it. Publishing still gets A Day to Remember is essentially going to get credit for writing the music and they're going to collect royalties from that. But like you said, like if for some reason Victory decided to yank it, like it sounds like they could yank it off of platforms,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. So it was a very interesting way that the judge settled it, giving credit like how that all panned out, which I thought was weird.
So it says this makes a little more sense. So it says the master is the sound recording of the song and the focus of this article. This is distinct from publishing, which corresponds to the composition or the song itself. So for publishing, they own the song, but Victory owns how the song
Right.
sounds. So if they finance the producer for it and the producer produced that song, it's like they could take that song back, but everything has to leave out of it. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right. Yeah. So it's just super weird. But I thought that was interesting. So 2013, they're out of their label, Common Courtesy. This is that next record.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, you said you actually didn't mind this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mind it. I didn't think it was super good, but I liked it a lot better than the one before it. Like it sounded a little more like their other stuff. I thought that Right Back at It Again is actually a pretty good song.
I love that song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed this album. Is it one that I'm going to put on a lot for like repeat? No. I'm going to go back to the first two. But if it came on, I'd listen to it, you know.
So this is the interesting thing. I talked about it earlier, but they start actually listing out credits on the album before. But on this one, Denny's back heavy
Hmm.
on most of the songs. There's only like 3 or 4 songs that he didn't have part of. And also Chad Gilbert from Newfound Glory
So,
is
I'm
on a lot of it.
I'm pretty sure that Denny guy though helped them record all their other albums because he didn't he quit touring with the band, but he was there to like produce and help them make it. So I think he still had a lot of influence. But yeah, you're right. I think in this album he did actually record the music
Recorded
part.
and wrote the songs.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So it's a better throwback to kind of what we were experiencing
sure.
before. So you got more of probably the pop punk. You got more of the distinction. I felt like you got more of the pop punk that led to the breakdowns and stuff like that, and then you also had the really heavy, like less life lessons learned a hard way is a freaking heavy, ridiculous song, and like it's just like I feel like that's what you got with Denny is the distinction between like really fast and poppy and
Yeah.
heavy.
So
Hmm.
that's the issue that we've talked about with all these bands. Because a lot of the bands we're talking about are influential, almost genre defining, huge names in the scene or whatever. Very, very unique sound. And somewhere along the way, they lose that. You know what separates me from you? It didn't sound like A Day to Remember that I knew from their first two albums. This one, you could if you only listened to the first two A Day to Remember albums, and then you put on Common Courtesy without telling them it was A Day to Remember, I think you could guess it because it sounded like A Day to Remember. But they're all the other albums don't do that. Like the next two after Common Courtesy, if you played that for me and I didn't know who it was, I'd have been like, I don't know, some generic metalcore band. Like it didn't sound like A Day to
Hmm.
Remember to me.
Sure.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean,
What do you
I
think,
think
Josh?
McKinnon's voice is very distinctive to me, so I can kind of pick it out. But I mean, if I wasn't familiar with his voice, I wouldn't be able to tell you if it was a day to
Right.
remember or not. If you showed me both from like something off of You're Welcome to For Those Who Have Heart, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Different band?
Yeah.
Yeah. Different band. Change your name.
Change your name.
Listen, I am all on that train right now with A Day to Remember. So there's too much money in the name A Day to Remember, though, for that. So I really like Common Courtesy as well. Again, I am so just into their heavy stuff, though. Like sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. Freaking love that one. I love life lessons learned a hard way. But City of Ocala, that very fast, right out of the gates, pop punk, in your face kind of thing. It's just such a good opening song that kind of set this record, almost like put him back onto the tracks, right? It got him back into, like you said, what we would have expected from A Day to Remember.
Hmm.
This should have been the follow up to Homesick, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
I think they said something like they had 40 songs to pick from on this album. That's crazy.
So
It did. I mean, it's like a 16 song album, but
I was gonna say that too. Apparently, that's like their writing process. They did it on this one. They did it on Bad Vibrations, and they also did it on You're Welcome. They always come with like 40 songs. Which, if you're coming with 40 songs and this is what I'm getting, like there must have been a lot of garbage you guys had. Like, let's be honest.
Well, it's
yeah.
funny. The very unrelated, but the Beatles used to do stuff like that. And one of the things they used to do, they would write something, and if like Paul and John couldn't remember it right off the bat the next morning, they would scrap it because then they would just think, cool. So then when someone hears this song, they're not going to remember it the next day. It's not worth writing, so they'd move on. But they
Right.
wrote, I mean, same deal.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
write
interesting.
40 songs or whatever, and then let's choose 10 to 15, and we'll take ideas from the other songs and just make 15 great songs.
No, I really like this album too. I'll be honest, I like everything from A Day to Remember up until You're Welcome. So, Bad Vibrations 2016 comes out. So, this one was interesting. Jeremy came out and said of the previous two albums, so we're talking Common Courtesy and What Separates Me From You, they had a really hard time writing the heavy music. Like he said, we really struggled with that. So for this album, they brought in the guy from Wage War, I think their guitarist. Denny's back. They had Andrew Wade come in and some guys who did heavy stuff. And we get a much more aggressive punk based album in Bad Vibrations. What do you guys think about this one?
I think it's terrible.
I did not like Bad Vibrations, to be honest with you.
Looks like I'm the outlier here.
Yeah.
I think that this thing has some way good songs on it.
I mean, their heavy stuff's cool, but like I'd rather go listen to other metalcore bands that have already done it. I mean, it's 2016, bro. Like metalcore's been done for a while.
I already said, listen, I've already said I can get down with some good metalcore. So I like metalcore. I like especially metalcore that goes back to kind of the stuff from the late 2010 era. So 2008, 2009. I like stuff that is similar to that. New metalcore I don't like, which is why I hate You're Welcome. Like anything that's metalcore related on that is just the new garbage.
So,
but I really like this one.
Paranoia, the song on Bad Vibrations, he said that he wrote it because of a terrifying event that happened to him, that some kid banged on his window at 3 a.m. on Halloween.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I get you should pull inspiration from life, dude, but like, come on. That's not like life-changing, life-altering event that some kid pranked you at 3 a.m. knocking on your window. Like,
I'm not going to lie. I remember when they released Paranoia as like a pre-release or whatever. And I remember my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, but she was like, they're Day to Remember released something new. And I was like, oh, have high hopes. And I listened to it and I went, nope, garbage.
It happened again.
I wonder if they had a hard time writing the heavy stuff for this record because, like you said, everything's already been done. So you start writing stuff. This happens to me all the time. I'll start writing stuff. I'm like, man, sounds so good. Like this is such a cool breakdown. And then I'm like, yeah, man, that's Korn.
Yeah.
Or like, oh man, that's Star Wars Prada. Oh, that's somebody else. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Writer's block, I guess, that you start writing things that sound like other things. And yeah, over the course of, let's see, they started in 2003. So what, 13 years?
Yeah.
There's a lot of exploration and such growth in metalcore that's happened that trying to go back and write something heavy, like, good luck. Because you did pop for so long,
But I think metalcore is getting to a point where like you're going to see a rebound in the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because all the like overproduced, like super, like, because I think this new metalcore wave is going to die soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I sure hope so.
Maybe we'll get back to the like roots of just real raw Earth Crisis type metalcore.
See, and like this is what I liked about this album, and you guys can call me crazy, but I felt like it was faster metal. I felt like there was more of the hardcore influence, more of like the punk influence in this one than you got from the last three albums, even from Homesick. This one to me was the closest like heavy album to For Those Who Have Heart. Like if you were to take For Those Who Have Heart and carry into a more hardcore sound, that's what this album was to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna hard disagree there.
All right.
I don't think it did. I don't think it sounded like it at all. But
like
I
don't know. Listen to the first song. It's just like it's fast, it's aggressive, and things like that. And I don't feel like you had that fast aspect in the other albums.
That's fair, but still sucked.
All right. Well, we'll go on to the album that does suck then.
All right.
Okay, 2019, they released the single Rescue Me. This is where, like, when this song came out, I was like, all right, I really am done with A Day to Remember. It was with Marshmello, EDM, remixes Rescue Me. This is perfect timing to talk about this right after coming out from First to Last. This wouldn't have happened without Skrillex, right?
Yeah.
So Did you
I
guys have any interest in this last
I listened
album?
to it. I did listen to it because I felt bad making you listen to all the crappy albums during Parkway Drive. So I did listen to these. I thought I was listening to Imagine Dragons the whole time.
Dude,
That's
Is
just what I felt like. I was like, this
so
is the worst.
much.
Yeah, I was like, this is the worst like corporate mainstream rock. There's like one song that he screams or something. I'm like, okay, that's not Imagine Dragons. Everything else, I'm like, this is Imagine Dragons.
So like I went through, you listen to FYM, FU Money is the name of the song. It sounds like a ripoff of Frey, Over My Head.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he sings like it was in the Frey, and by the way, they covered Frey Over My Head. um, Looks Like Hell sounds like a Linkin Park ripoff with some of their riffs.
Mhm.
Degenerates is probably the closest thing that we had to A Day to Remember pop punk that just was transitioning into a more defined sound for the current time. But even that one was garbage. Like you said, it's garbage rock.
Yeah.
Like you could play
AKA
this on
Imagine Dragons.
any rock station, radio station.
I did like the re-entry song with Mark Hoppus. I
Yeah.
did like that one. That was a different take. I did like it, but it's just rock. But it was good.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, right? None of us are against rock, but this is the qualm we have with every band that we're talking about lately. Is it's like, how do you go from For Those Who Have Heart to this?
Right.
Mhm.
And it's not even again, and because we'll use the prime example of one of the greatest bands of all time in Thrice. You are allowed to change your sound. You can do it and still sound like you. Like still
Right.
like you can Thrice through all their albums still sounds like Thrice. A Day to Remember through all their albums does not sound like A Day to Remember. They end up sounding like everyone else. That's my
Right.
biggest issue. And I will say that every time that we have a band that does that, you know?
Right. And even the last single, Miracle, did you guys listen to this one?
Yeah.
I did
It
not
is
listen to Nicole.
every single metalcore band could have written this song. There's nothing unique about it. There's nothing special about it. Every single crappy metalcore band today could have put this out and you wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Put it
Mhm.
on shuffle and you'll never know who is singing this one. The last thing that I'll have to kind of say about this, has this just turned into Jeremy's project? Are the other three members just getting paid for the name?
I'm pretty sure
See,
every single would say that about their band. That's my band. Jeremy and the boys.
you have a real problem with singers, don't you?
Every singer.
Here's the thing though. Jeremy is literally the only one who's credited on every song that comes out.
Yeah.
Every
I
other
mean,
song, it has like it's different people. And there's some songs that don't even have the people who are touring on them. Some of their songs today are being written by the producers, are being written by other people coming into the studio with them. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean,
I would have,
if he's in a situation where he's like fronting the costs and everything, then it's like, I mean, they got out of that deal with Victory. It looks like they're on Epitaph for like
Fueled by
releasing.
Ramen.
Is it Fueled by Ramen?
so
Yeah.
they still are self like produced and stuff, but they did I don't know if you call it a partnership with a label just for distribution.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bands where like they own the rights to all their stuff, like publishing rights, but they will use a record label to release the
Yeah.
record.
Yep. I think
So
that's
it's
what they've
like,
done on the last like 3 albums was like that.
so that's where I think where you were talking about where they have the mastering rights, but they have the publishing rights where like they own it, but they have the rights to distribute to whatever they want for whatever the deal is, whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I will say though, Trevor, that just going back to your question, I mean, it's 20 the last I guess like single was 2022, so it was last year. That's 19 years of being a band. I don't want to be in the same job in 19 years. I'm sure a lot of their band, like the band members that have gone through it, got burned out, started a life,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the same dedication. Maybe it is Jeremy's project. And after 20 years, cool. Do it, man. You know? I mean, we sit up here and talk a lot of crap on this stuff, but like you can't argue that like they're a huge band. We had a ton of fun. They've influenced, thousands and thousands and thousands of people Like, yeah, they released a couple bad albums, but like, cool, have fun with it now. You put your time in. It's 20 years.
Yeah, but
Oh,
is
Play
this?
crappy music and
But
make
that's
money.
my
I
thing.
don't
Is
care.
this even fun? Like, I don't even
Not
know
for
if this
me.
is fun. You know what I mean? Like, when you have Mind Reader, for example, off the last album, it was McKinnon and a guy named Mike Green. I don't even know who freaking Mike Green is. Like, it's a ghostwriter for a metal album. Like, this happens in other genres, but is metal and stuff like that now so mainstream that we have ghostwriters in metal and hardcore?
I don't know. After 20 years, you probably don't get the same involvement with your bandmates as you did before. He's got to be old, right? He's got to be there. They got to be older than us. They're probably pushing their 40s.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
probably
like,
true.
yeah. So it's like, have fun. Bring a ghostwriter and make crappy music. You put the time in. I don't like it, but enjoy it.
It's almost.
Cushion that retirement, man.
I feel like it almost falls in the same category as like when we were talking about Parkway Drive. Like, okay, they wrote a hardcore album. What's next? Let's write a heavy album. Okay, what's next? Let's write a pop album. And then they part ways. They release that, the 5 records, whatever, and they go on this massive hiatus. And it's like, well, if we're going to keep doing this, we've got to make money on it. What crowd are we going to project to that's going to make the most sales to make it worth it to keep doing it?
I
Where we
guess
can
that's
still play
true.
our old stuff, but this new stuff will fund the fun projects. I don't know. I actually
Yeah.
listened to, or I was going to tell you, I listened to "You're Welcome" with my wife on the drive home from Idaho on Saturday, and she kind of had a interesting take. I can't remember the song name. She was listening to a song. She's like, "You can definitely tell this song was written for a live show." I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Well, you can just hear like the loud chanting here, and like she's like, I could imagine like the big fire and explosion and stuff on the stage that they now do, like the overproduction stuff." And I'm like, it's kind of an interesting take. So maybe in these records, if you go back and listen to some of them, think was this written for a live show production, not maybe an album production, and maybe it's like not a song you want to listen to on an album, but it's definitely a song you want to see played live.
I
See,
mean,
that is an interesting take because one of the things I was going to point out is really the only songs that Westfall is on, Neil Westfall, who he's been with the band since the beginning, 2003. He was an original guitarist and stuff. The only stuff he's on is their heavy stuff now. That's the only
Mm-hmm.
time he's credited. So I feel like Neil's writing his heavy, like 3 or 4 heavy songs, and that's all he wants to do. And then he's just like, yeah, sure, do whatever else you want.
so in 2022, they toured 100. They played at least 100 shows.
Making that money.
And based off of like one of the set lists, I was able to find like 6 out of the 15 songs were from albums. Were from I guess Homesick. I don't think they had anything on there from the album before Homesick. So they
Those
still
who
do
have
play
heart.
some of those older songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's a good point. I mean, after 20 years, because a lot of the bands we've talked about that have been around this long, they taper off pretty hard,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But 20 years and they're playing 100 shows.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Josh has a point that, like, yeah, the music they're right now is just go play shows, go play stadiums.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Listen,
for those who have heart is definitely a crowd driven show, right? It depends on the crowd on how that show's going to go. Like, but it has to be very crowd driven. But you listen to the later stuff, you don't really need a wild crowd. It's more a production show now. Where it is for the big stadium shows.
Yeah.
you know what? I'm changing my opinion. Keep writing crappy music, get all these rock kids, and then give me a 20-year anniversary for those who have heart. And every hardcore kid who grew up with this needs to show out and just beat the crap out of everyone.
Do you think they would do it? Do you think they would do a 20 year for that album?
I bet
I
if
mean,
they did, I don't think they tore on it.
I bet they would do a 20-year on Homesick.
Yeah.
I bet Homesick's the 20-year for these guys. I
I
wish they would do for those who have heart.
I bet they would do like one in Florida. I bet they would go to California, and I bet they would go somewhere back east.
I don't know, man. They're still playing. I mean, last year, 100 shows.
Mm-hmm.
They could easily pull out like,
Yeah,
you know,
They could.
a 60 show tour for
That'd be
those
sick.
who have heart or Homesick.
We're 4
I'd go
years
see
away. I'd
If
go
they
see
did
that
it,
one.
if they did a Homesick or For Those Who Have Heart, like reunion tour, I'd go to it for sure.
The one thing I hope, well, that I wish they would do and any band should do is hope that they release better band merch. I think
Heck no, man. Bring back the cartoons.
I
Let's go.
You didn't like their merch?
I hated the cartoon merch. You just look like a freaking dork. Like you're wearing a Cookie Monster shirt from Walmart. Like I hated it. And I don't know why that caught on so well. Because you just saw every kid wearing that, and it was just like, I don't know, like maybe it's just because I've gotten older. I just wish they just had a solid varsity A Day to Remember shirt.
Dude,
That's it.
their old like vintage merch is going for over $100
I don't
online.
doubt it.
T-shirts.
I bought a Newfound Glory shirt a while ago. I think I told you about. I paid almost $200 for it.
Oh my gosh. It's cloth, man.
It's pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie. You're like, I know how much that costs, so I would never buy it. But that's a pretty sick shirt because it says like Easy Core. I think it says Easy Core on the back, and
So it's
then
part of the Easy Core tour with these guys.
Yeah.
yep. And it actually says A Newfound Glory, which was the original name, instead of Newfound Glory. So that's pretty sick. And it's got like the old like them playing a hometown show on the back, and he's like on the stage, and people are stage diving.
Yeah.
Listen, Josh, you give me $200, I'll make 20 of those for you, bro. I got you.
Yeah, dude, it's
He'll
weird
even
how much
sweat in
merch
it, so
goes for.
he'll wear it and sweat in it so it feels authentic.
That's right. That's right. So
You're not hardcore unless you do that.
you're not hardcore unless you live hardcore. Cool. Well, listen, I love A Day to Remember still. I will continue to listen to them. I won't turn on You're Welcome, but if anyone has different opinions on these guys, if anyone, we said this on Parkway too, but if you guys can explain to us why You're Welcome is okay, we'd be interested in your crappy opinion. But no, man, there's so many memories. We were so dumb singing their songs in the car, so many fun shows, stealing albums, like so much stuff with these guys. And they'll forever be a band that got me deeper into the scene. So a lot of love for A Day to Remember.
Yep. Same here, man. This was
Yay,
fun.
bud.
Cool. Well, we'll catch you guys next week. Kyle, I think you're up, right?
Yep. It is me. And I might take us for a little bit of a doozy. So
All right.
will see.
We'll post it on Twitter. How about
Okay.
that? Okay.
All right.
Peace.
But
Later.